Well, thank you, Senator Cassidy. Thank you to Director Swagel and Controller General Dodaro for testifying today and for the work that your entire teams do for our country. This subcommittee is charged with promoting fiscal responsibility and economic growth because, of course, the two go hand in hand. As a nation, we must be concerned about the growth in the national debt. If not handled carefully, it could threaten to slow the economy and jeopardize our ability to make key investments in everything from innovation to national security. The first step to improving our nation's fiscal outlook is improving the economic outlook of families, businesses, communities, and states that have been hit hard by the COVID-19 virus. Yesterday, Federal Reserve Chair Powell warned that, quote, too little support would lead to a weak recovery, creating unnecessary hardship for households and businesses, close quote. Providing assistance to families who can't make ends meet and helping hard businesses stay afloat is not only the right thing to do, it's also the fiscally responsible thing to do. It will help ensure that families can pay their rent or buy groceries at their local stores, and that small businesses can continue to employ their workers, which will help to keep local economies moving and improve our nation's economic outlook. The second step to getting our nation's fiscal house in order after the recovery from COVID-19 is for Congress to implement common sense, bipartisan measures that promote fiscal responsibility and reduce the national debt. As recommended by GAO, we need to address the so-called tax gap, which comes from corporations and millionaires avoiding taxes by underreporting income to the Treasury. We need to revisit the partisan tax giveaways that were jammed through Congress in 2017 in order to ensure that major corporations are paying their fair share in taxes. And we need to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government, one of my top priorities as a ranking member of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Subcommittee on Federal Spending Oversight. In seeking a bipartisan path to improving our fiscal standing, Congress must also strengthen and protect Social Security and Medicare, while making it absolutely clear that seniors will receive the full benefits that they have earned over a lifetime of work. Overall, it is clear that once we have recovered from COVID-19, the sooner we address the national debt, the better. As shown by CBO and GAO, the difficulties of addressing the fiscal outlook only compound over time, making it all the more pressing that we work together in a bipartisan way to get through the crisis and then develop a fiscally responsible long-term plan for the federal budget. Senator Cassidy, I look forward to working with you and the other members of the Finance Committee, and I look forward to hearing from Director Swagel and Comptroller General Dodaro on ways to improve our fiscal outlook. Thank you.
Thank you,
I just want to start by thanking both our witnesses again for your testimony and for your work. And Mr. Chair, thank you for your courtesy. Let me start with a question to Dr. Swagel. The CBO's long-term budget outlook points out that short-term increases in the national debt can support the economy during challenging times such as those we are in right now. Can you explain to the committee how, especially given historically low interest rates, providing fiscal support during COVID-19 can have a positive effect on the economy?
Yes, I can. And we have a report on our website that goes through some of the different fiscal actions taken by the Congress and looks at the effectiveness of each one. The economy, of course, right now is operating far below potential, with the unemployment rate much higher than it was before the pandemic began. The fiscal actions taken by the Congress have supported spending by families, have supported businesses, including small businesses, and kept the relationships between employees and small businesses together, helping those businesses make it through. So in all these ways, on the demand side, both the demand side and the supply side, supporting the economy.
Excellent, thank you. We all know that ultimately we do need to address the national debt, but it's also clear that in the short term, our economy urgently needs additional support. Mr. Dodaro, last year I led a bipartisan bill titled acting on the annual Duplication Report Act of 2019 that would take action on several recommendations that the GAO made to Congress in its annual Duplication, Fragmentation, and Overlap report. 2 weeks ago, I introduced the 2020 iteration of this bill, again with the bipartisan support of some of my colleagues, responding to this year's GAO report on duplication, fragmentation, and overlap, as well as opportunities to achieve financial benefits in government programs. Mr. Dodaro, can you explain how adopting GAO's recommendations to reduce duplication, fragmentation, and overlap would help improve the fiscal outlook?
Yes, since we've been doing that work over the last decade, we've made over 1,000 recommendations to the Congress and the executive branch agencies. Over 56% have been implemented. And as I mentioned in my opening statement, we're on track to see close to $500 billion in financial benefits already be produced as a result of acting on our recommendations. Now, acting on open recommendations can save tens of billions of dollars in additional savings to the federal government. The two pieces of legislation that you mentioned would go a long way to implementing this and have the potential to yield billions of dollars. For example, they would allow DOD to capture the full cost of providing foreign military sales. Right now, the salaries and benefits of people who work on these foreign military sales to help sell U.S. equipment to other countries, their costs aren't included. So the people buying this equipment and using the services of our military aren't paying for the full cost of using those services. That would yield benefits. The legislation would allow 17 million tax returns that come in to have a scannable barcode that will allow IRS to be more effectively enforce the tax laws in a fair and equitable manner. There also, it would require the Navy to put more emphasis on operations and maintenance costs when they're actually acquiring ships. 70% of the cost of these multi-billion-dollar enterprises are in the operations and maintenance costs, and we accept ships before they're finally completed and tested, and then the operation and maintenance costs go up considerably over time. So there's a lot of recommendations, and this is a good way to deal with this.
Well, thank you very much for that, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you and others on it. I want to see if I can do one more question before my time is up to Dr. Swagel. In its long-term outlook report, CBO considers how school closures during COVID-19 will have long-term effects on the workforce. Can you explain the importance of education for America's economic future and how COVID-19 could affect the workforce in the long run?
Yes, I can. And it's something we worry a lot about, both in the near term and the long term. But in the long term, productivity growth is the key driver of our economic output and our trajectory. And the school closures mean less effective, or for many children, utterly ineffective school education and schooling. So I'm worried about that in the long term. In the short term, it seems to be affecting inequality, the most disadvantaged kids having it the worst. So I worry at both horizons.
Well, thank you. I think that to reduce some of these longer term effects, Congress needs to dedicate federal relief dollars to help education and workforce systems continue to meet the needs of students and workers during these unprecedented circumstances. Again, thank you for your work, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for your courtesy.